I'm Ruth Molman from the Historic District Commission of Farmington Hills. We are in the home of Jeff and Sherry Stewart, who have purchased and moved the 1845 house that Stephen Jennings built for his daughter Jane or Phoebe when she married Eber Durham in 1843. The house was completed in 1845. Stephen Jennings was the second proprietor of what we know today as the Botsford Inn. At the time, it was simply a stagecoach stop owned by Orrin Weston, who ran the Redbird stage over what was more or less an Indian trail at the time. It got many a settler to the interior. Jennings and his wife Sally had the house which became the 16-mile house. Jennings sort of built up the little town around there, building a number of houses, including the one he built for himself, and various businesses which in the area, which became known as Clarenceville. The 1920s brought the automobiles to Farmington, and at that point the inn as a stop declined. And it was at that point that Henry Ford moved in. For a man who said history was bunk, he did more preservation than anybody you can imagine. He purchased the inn and the two houses, and he established the Botsford Inn as a historic inn and popular restaurant. The houses in 1924 had to be moved back from the road in order for Grand River to come through. And the property went on as part of the Botsford Inn until the death of Henry Ford in the 84, Sherry? 1984, and that's when the hospital was going to build on part of the property that John Anhut had. And at that point, the houses, which were not part of the historic district at that time, had to be moved in order to make room for the hospital. And that's when the Stewarts came along and saved this particular little house, and the other house, the house that was built for his own residence by Stephen Jennings, was also saved at the same time. This is an extremely important part of our historic district, and being a Greek revival, it makes it extremely special for Farmington Hills. And the preservation that the Stewarts have done is just absolutely outstanding. This is Sherry and Jeff Stewart, who are living in the house that was built for Jane Jennings Durham as a wedding present. And it's very fitting that a couple will have the house that she had, another Farmington family. Now, this house, of course, was down in Clarenceville. Now, how did you decide that you wanted this particular house?
We'd heard about the house through Jeff's parents who lived next door, and Gene Fox had asked them if they'd be interested in moving it because Botsford Hospital owned the property and they wanted to build something else there and the house needed to go. And nobody wanted to demolish it, so we drove by and saw it, and we both looked at each other and said, we have to look into this. So Jeff called the city the next day.
Now, there were two houses at the time, and both of them had been built by Stephen Jennings. And this was the smaller of the houses. Now, this one was more restored when you saw it. Was that the reason you wanted it, or was there some other reason?
It was the architecture of this house. I thought it was really charming.
Now, it's a smaller Greek revival than the other building that was involved. Mm-hmm. And now, how did you go about procuring the house? What was involved?
I remember this. We decided we'd like to take a stab at it, and we asked the city what was involved in making a bid on the house, because the homes were going to be bid on by people in the community and then awarded to two individuals, one for each house. The Historic District Commission's emphasis was going to be on your intent with the house, and that you keep it within the community, and that you have it at the right kind of setting, like not in the back of a neighborhood, because this type of house would have been on a main road. So they were interested in those different aspects of the bidding process. So we put together a bid within 3 days. We had to arrange for a mover, check with Edison as to clearance and the route that would be taken. We had to have secured property, and we were really moving for about 3 days. We got our bids together. My folks lived next door to where we are now. They had 7 acres. I grew up in that house next door, and they were good enough to give us 2 acres to put the house on. So that was just a matter of going up and getting a letter and having that documentation. And let's see, we called around, found a mover, got arrangements, and placed a bid of about $550 on the house. And we were worried because we were told there were about a dozen parties interested in bidding on the homes. And so we were rolling in mainly hoping that our location and that sort of thing would count more than the dollars. And we knew we'd need all the money we could put together to move the house. So we almost got the house for free. We got the property for free. And we were broke for years after that.
Doing all the work on it. Well, I want to make a point here. The Historical District Commission does not encourage moving houses, but these 2 houses were exceptions. They were such fine architecture that we wanted them preserved regardless. And of course, they were coming in with something very special that was to the advantage of the whole community when you have a hospital that we sorely needed here. And the house was, there were certain things that they had done because between the period that Henry Ford had prepared this house for the Shaws and the time that it was rented out, which is always a disaster for a property, they had done certain things to it. What happened to these lovely floors? The floors that we'll show you a little bit are original random plank flooring. What had they done to the floors, Jeff?
Well, they upgraded them by, I think initially they laid down oak flooring. They put down furring strips and then laid oak flooring like you'd see in a house that was built in the 50s. Nice tongue and groove oak. And that was okay, but after that people had subsequently put down layers of linoleum and carpet, and to where when we started peeling back the different layers of things, we got down to the oak. That was covered up with this nasty adhesive that just wouldn't come off, and it wasn't going to take a belt sander. It was going to take wasn't going to come off. So we removed the oak and got rid of that, and then we sanded down the flooring. There was ash in this room. It's pretty evenly spaced, about 5 inches or so. And then in the dining room and the living room, there's yellow pine, which is varying degrees of width, but all of it's tongue and groove. And so we sanded it down and stained it and like it quite a bit.
You actually getting rid of that other floor was really getting back to the original, to the random plank flooring that they built into the house in that period. So, and then you've done a lot of very intriguing decorating, Sherry.
It's very fun.
You've done a lot of the work yourself. What did you do here in the kitchen that's special?
In the kitchen, a little bit of stenciling. That's where I started stenciling over the cupboards. The cupboards were here. In fact, they look a lot like the cupboards in Edison's parents' home at Greenfield Village. The wood on the top was solid, and so we removed the panel, and put in old glass. And so if you get a reflection off the glass, it's nice and wavy. We wanted a tile backsplash, and could not afford, the tiles I wanted at the time. So I bought a mold, and we poured our own tiles and painted them and put them up. Did the light fixtures. The one over the sink is an old funnel from the garage that I punched, like punch tin. And this is a stained glass fixture.
All of which matches the house, and then the fixture here in the kitchen is unique. It's a reproduction, you said, but it's like the traditional tin kitchen fixtures that you would have found in this home.
We made an island, cooking island in the middle there. Sherry brought her stove from Dearborn. It's a little bitty, a non-functional type stove, but she wanted it, and so we had the island built around it. So now if we ever need a new stove, we're going to have to find another one that's small like that.
the other parts of the house, you've done a lot. There's stenciling I noticed in your dining room, which is just exquisite. How long did it take you to do that, Sherry?
Many hours. You want me to talk about that when we go in, or it's? I cut the stencils after studying Moses Eaton's work. He was a New England itinerant stenciler. They would go from village to village or town to town and do that. And true to form, I started checking stencils in the closet, which is where you see how it looks, both the flooring and the walls. And I can show you the floor when we take a tour.
Okay, well maybe we should go take a look at some of these things. And another thing in the kitchen, I don't know if we can photograph it, is this staircase, which is the original staircase from the house. And in the houses of this period, the 1845 or so, there was a farmhouse, basically, the Greek Revival farmhouse. And there's a little room back here, we'll show you, that was the owner's bedroom. And then the children would be upstairs sometimes with farm hands and hired help and whoever was needed on the farm. So there would have been 2 dormitories upstairs that we will see with the slanted ceiling, which is typical of houses of this period. So let's go take a look at we'll start downstairs and then we can go up and take a look at the dormitory that was up there. This house is unusual. What do you raise here? What sort of animals have you got on this acreage?
Chickens, we got about 2 dozen chickens. We've got a couple of horses. There's 3 dogs, 3 cats, 2 rats. I got a fish. We don't raise anything for profit except the eggs, and we're losing it on the eggs. Chickens eat more than they put out.
I thought you were doing something with berries also.
Oh, in the summer Jeff ordered black raspberry canes and planted them around our garden, and we've got customers who look for our sign in the summer.
Oh, I'm selling firewood too, if you're interested.
Good. Well, let's go into the other sections of the house and take a look. Sherry, this is a special corner.
Yeah.
Will you tell us about it? From your stencils to your cupboard to the marks on the floor.
All right. When we moved in, there was a closet built out into the room right here. There was plywood wainscoting and a door. We pulled all that off, and inside the closet at the back were pieces of the original wainscoting, and which was exciting. So we figured that was the way the room originally appeared. This line of nail holes right here probably signified that there was a corner cupboard built in to the corner of the room. This is a chimney right behind this wall, and there wouldn't have been a chimney there then because there weren't heating facilities coming up through a basement. It was just wood stove heat. So and another thing is we found out by looking in the closet that there were newspapers stuffed in here. They were very charred. They were from the 50s, and it appeared that there had been a chimney fire that had been squelched. We also, when we tore off the oak steps on the enclosed stairway up to the upstairs, the left side of the stairs were removed. They were just sawn away. And so we were assuming that during the 50s there must have been this chimney fire, and that the firemen actually removed the stairs, part of the steps, to determine that the fire was actually out. Anyway, this, I designed the cupboard, and we hired Michael Von Stieg of Waldheim Woodworks to reproduce this cupboard. We felt that this is how it would have appeared, for that period, the 1840s. This is the stenciling I spoke about earlier. This design here is tansy. It's a wildflower. And again, this was patterned after the stenciling that Moses Eaton did in New England. The willow tree was an early American symbol of immortality, and so that was chosen specifically for that. These are the willow fronds, and they travel around the windows and doorways.
Well, this was probably your everyday parlor. and they probably weren't thinking of a dining room. They probably would have eaten in the
Probably not.
kitchen in a farmhouse rather than worrying about that. You said on this side that you had the Franklin stove.
Yeah, when
Probably.
we removed the oak flooring here and then sanded down the yellow pine, and you can see that the tongue and groove has worn away here, and this is actually, it's hard to tell from with this carpet here, but there's a area here that has been worn away through a traffic pattern, and up here there was a hole that went into a false chimney that's still there. If you look outside, you'll see two chimneys. Well, one of them stops right here, and that serviced a Franklin stove from these two rooms, as well as stoves from the upstairs. People would just put their stovepipes into this chimney, and then the smoke would go out. So there was a stove here at one time for heat, and very likely it went through on this side for the living room too, but we didn't need to replace this ceiling. We were able to just replaster when they electrified.
The stove pipe was what heated the bedrooms in the stove pipe is what heated the bedrooms in the upstairs. We'll go into the parlor then next and show you the little room that was most likely the parents' bedroom.
I should
Yes,
add
house.
that Michael also used the wainscoting pieces from the closet to reproduce what we felt was the original wainscoting throughout the room.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yes.
that would have been there.
And just before we leave the room, I want to make note of the reproduction chandelier that you have here. That was definitely could have been used in a house like this. These wouldn't have been little electric
Electrified.
lights. These would have been
They would
little
have been
candles. And you would have only used those on special occasions because they're kind of expensive. Let's go into the other room. This would have been your probably Sunday parlor.
That's right.
And you'll notice that there was a door in the kitchen, and there's a door here. Every room seems to have a door because they would have to bring wood in and things to heat. And also, I guess they were afraid of fire, weren't they not? Notice the excellent latches that you put on all the doors. And now those windows are special, Sherry. You were telling me about that?
Just that there's so much old glass in the house, and we wanted to preserve it. So we didn't try to replace the windows, we just tried to repair them, and so we would take them out. It took 6 weeks to remove, scrape, repaint, reglaze, recaulk, well, that's the glazing, each window sash. So it took quite a number of years to redo the windows. They are special because they're 12 panes over 12, and in some of the early pictures of Botsford Inn, the original part of the inn was a large home by Orrin Weston, but the back part of the inn had 12 over 12 windows, and which is significant to me because Stephen Jennings built this house for Jane as a wedding present, and he also added on to the inn, and so he used this style window.
You have it there, and you have it in his own home, I believe, too. Another significant part of this room is it was the parlor, but over to the side here we have what was a bedroom. What was it? What size did you tell me that was? And what a tiny
7
bed!
by 12 feet.
Yes, just barely big enough for a bed.
Right, without a closet. And now we've turned the other bedroom of that same size into the bathroom, because at that day they wouldn't have had a plumbing inside either.
No.
So the two bedrooms have become more or less an office and a bathroom, and then that's left with 2 bedrooms upstairs. We've put one in the basement. You had mentioned we brought in this hardware for the doors and so on, but in fact that is the original hardware. We didn't. We
All
in some
the
cases.
hardware is original.
Yeah,
So-
we in some cases had to remove it and clean it up a little bit, with the exception of that one case lock we're looking at there. But the rest of it is original hardware to the house. The other thing that's kind of unique about this are these little latches over each of the electrical switches and the plugs. These are called Edison latches, and the story is that Thomas Edison made these up for Henry Ford to conceal the fact that the house had been electrified. You'll see these in a couple of the homes at Greenfield Village too, where they papered over them, and to look at the wall you don't realize there's a switch there. It's kind of unique to a keeper.
There were 7 layers of wallpaper in each of these rooms.
Oh my.
The outer obviously being way too contemporary.
Jeff, they did a lot of detail work here. Can you tell us something about the carpentry that was done?
Sure. Yeah, this one bead here that runs along is pretty much throughout the house. It's indicative of Greek Revival architecture and woodworking. Also, this molding that comes down along this side, it's that way throughout the house. Now, when we got the house, there were some areas where someone had just taken almost a 2x4 and gone along and replaced some of this woodworking, but we removed that and then we had this restored. Also, in the house, wherever the oak flooring had been, they had notched a lot of our woodwork trim. And so we had to either add on at the bottom, or in some cases we replaced the whole beadwork just to match it up right. The doors are kind of interesting. I'll show you about those in a minute.
Okay.
Here again you see this same bead going along the door and the same trim. All the doors in the house, pretty much all the doors in the house are these panel doors. There's one bar going right down the middle, and then these 2 raised panels. A lot of the doors in our community, I've noticed, have a cross. My folks' house has a cross there, for instance, and other ones are broken in the middle here. But this one goes all the way down. And these hinges are not original, but the rest of the hinges you'll notice on the doors are. They're just blocked off. They don't have a bead on the top. This is called a key latch, and these are original pretty much throughout the house. Another point of interest is this stenciling on the floor. A lot of times they didn't have carpeting, and so they'd stencil right on the floor, paint a design. In this case it's called a bow tie stencil. Sherry did this, and she thought it looked nice. I think it does too. It gets awful muddy when you're coming in from outside though.
Well, let's go take a look at the upstairs, shall we?
Okay.
These are particularly steep stairs.
Takes a while to get used to them.
Oh, we're upstairs in what would have been the dormitory section of the house. They didn't believe in separate bedrooms for the children. They put the boys on one side and the girls on the other. Notice the slanted ceilings that we have here. That's typical of the house of this period. And you see there are 2 rooms. One would have been for the boys and the other one for the girls. And they not only would have had the children up here, they would have had any hired help that they would have, such as a hired hand or the maids that would help out. They wouldn't be called maids, they'd be called helpers of some sort that would help on these farms. You needed a lot of help to run a farm in those days. Sherry, what did you do to the house to make it special?
Well, there were about 6 or 7 layers of wallpaper up here too. Now, we chose to re-wallpaper after stripping all that off and spackling and everything. They probably would not have had wallpaper at the period this house was built, but we chose to use it. One of the things I wanted to show you is these latches. These are called Norfolk latches, or thumb latches, and they're original to the house. They're through all the doors upstairs here. And so those are neat. There's an attic entrance over here, and again, a lot of the woodwork was stripped and repainted because it was needed repair.
Well, you notice also that the woodwork here is just plain board, where down in the parlor, it was the multiple layers that were so...
It gets progressively simpler as you move through the house. Jeff pointed out the beading and everything in the living room. The kitchen's very flat, but there's still a chamfered bead, and then this is totally flat.
Let's go down the basement and we can look at see how the house was built on logs.
Okay.
Which was typical of this period. Sometimes they didn't even bother to take the bark off.
They didn't.
We'll go down and take a look.
Okay, thanks.
These steep basement stairs replaced the original ladder. They didn't originally have stairs to the basement. It was just a straight ladder coming down. And Jeff will tell you about the construction of the house as we look around the basement. This is where you could see how this house was put together in 1845.
Yeah, if you look at the ceiling, you can see that these are logs. A lot of the bark has fallen off them, and at some point in time, someone whitewashed these logs. But they would have just hand-hewn the one side of the logs so that the floorboards would fit flat, and with the underside, they wouldn't have cared. One of the beams is squared off on all sides. Could have been in a barn, and they just took advantage of that barn beam and used it here. People pretty much made their houses out of whatever was available. The kind of trees in the house would be the type of trees that were growing on the site. And the floorboards, here you can see the underside to the kitchen flooring. It's the ash wood. This is a modification. This is a railroad rail from the Dodge Main plant. I had a friend who was in the scrap business, and I needed a support for this wall because originally this was not a basement. In fact, this whole little section here wasn't original to the house. So there was a wall here at the Grand River site, and we of course moved it, so the wall went away, and I didn't want to put a wall back here because I needed the space. So I got this big railroad rail and stuck it up there. As I got this one tree that runs the length of the basement here, I got that out of our backyard and put it up so I wouldn't have to have a post in the middle of the floor. We, after the move, had to have this chimney replaced, so the people came in and bricked up to where the chimney had been meeting the floor originally, and replaced the chimney underneath, and the basement was put in with block. We had it up on stilts after the move, or like a Lincoln log arrangement, where the basement was suspended by these various
Pieces of railroad tie.
railroad ties in a Lincoln log fashion, and then they came in, they did the block work to meet the sill beams of the house, and then the house mover came back and jacked it down a few inches so that it rested on the cinder block, and then we later went in and had the fieldstone facing put on it to make it look more original.
And I think we want to point out on those hand-hewn beams, you have the original X marks on them.
Right. Yeah, and in fact in the attic to the house you can see these same beams.
They had a sawmill in Sleepy Hollow at this period, so they could have very easily, well, and then they had one in Clarenceville also to do the milling of the lumber.
Mm-hmm. For the floorboards?
For the floorboards that we can see, yes. This is really sensational to be able to look at this and see how they built a house.
Yeah, it gives it a lot of special character, makes it kind of neat.
Jeff and Sherry, thank you so much for sharing your home with us, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy this tour of the Durham home. Really, I like to call it Jane's house, but so be it. It's just wonderful, and what you've done to preserve it is absolutely magnificent. And
It's been our pleasure.
Our community can certainly be proud of this.
Thank you.